r/AskReddit. People often mistakenly say a full 360 when they really mean someone turning their behavior only the opposite way. When have you actually seen done a full 360 in your life? Pre-GPS time. I drove up to a stop sign on a frontage road leading to an expressway on ramp. I was lost, not sure if I should turn left and get on the expressway or go back the way I came. I looked both ways and no one was coming. So I rolled through the stop sign and into the intersection while turning left, changed my mind halfway through the intersection and kept turning left until I was headed back from where I came. Changed my mind again, flipped a U-turn and rolled through the stop sign again, a full 360. Turned left again and drove up onto the expressway where the state trooper who'd been watching me the whole time immediately pulled me over. Trooper gets out of his car and says, "I just watched you run the same stop sign twice," and wrote me up for 2 moving violations. It wasn't one of my finer moments. Well, one winter I was driving and I was going down a hill with a slight curve to the left. I hit a patch of ice and my pickup truck spun a perfect 360 and I ended up parallel with the guardrail. An oncoming driver witnessed this and stopped to make sure I was okay. I gave him a thumbs up and said like a glove. And that's the story of my legitimate 360. Anyone that gets back together with a bad ex. I moved out of my parents' house for a job in another state, and after a few years moved right back into my parents' house lol. I have since moved on. Thankfully. Here's hoping that doesn't happen again. Going through a roundabout for the first time and not understanding what to do. After I got a D in a class in college and had to retake it, I said I'm going to really try the next time. Not going to skip homework and only read 20% of the textbook etc. I kept that up for maybe 2 weeks and then stopped caring again. I can't sustain that level of caring. I did get a B the second time though. No third retake. I got the habit of getting up early, before sunrise, and it had a great effect on me. But now I am back to my old ways of going to sleep late and not wanting to get out of bed when I wake up. Especially if I have to go to work. Went into Faculty of Education. After first year. Decided I didn't want to be a teacher anymore. Finished second year since I was already halfway done. Turned around 180 degrees. Worked for the federal government for 8 months. Contract was up. So I took a teaching job, 180 degrees. Vowed it would be for only 1 year. After 1 year. Got out of there and left the country for a while, 180 degrees. When I returned, I couldn't find another job as a civil servant. So I had to take another teaching job, 180 degrees. So I guess that's been 720 degrees really. Now I've been a teacher for 10 years. I guess I got used to it. Because I quite like it now. Every time my brother does something bad he gets really apologetic for 5 minutes. Then does it again. I hated myself for a while in high school. I thought no one liked me. I was awkward as hell and I wasn't good enough to study after high school. A year ago I got into a good community college course and started just being myself. I was working on projects I was happy with. Everyone was nice to everyone. I was seeing a mentor on improving my self-esteem and I was just having a blast. Of course it didn't fix everything. But life was finally better. That only lasted the school year though. I've reverted back to old habits. I feel like everyone is silently judging me for not talking to them outside of classes. I'm getting panic attacks. Looking at what I did wrong despite doing so much right. I'm even looking at universities again and considering a gap year because university is too good for me. I knew a guy who started off as a broke college student. He was studying law, but had a hobby with computers in the dial-up BBS days. He made a piece of business software that helped him with his legal studies. But soon a lot of students were using it. So he decided to market it. And got a lot of buyers. Within a few years. He ditched the college plans and was the CEO of a multi-million-dollar software company that had over 40 employees and big name clients. Then he got bored running a company. And sold it for $3 million. I think. He got married. But it didn't work out. And he got seriously fucked over. He lost most of his assets. Except for a condo, a car, and some of his furniture. He decided to finish his law degree and graduated essentially as a broke college student. All within 8 years. An old friend. She got addicted to drugs and was homeless in her early 20s. Met a guy. Got clean. Had a couple kids and was doing amazingly well. Her and her husband got into an argument one night and she left the house in a fit of anger. She was found in a dealer's house a few days later. High as a kite. Her life devolved back into the drugs and homelessness. Her husband divorced her and has ROs for him and the kids because on drugs. She's dangerous. It's really sad because every time she pops up and mentions getting clean, she has a bunch of family and friends who try to help her. Usually she lasts about 3 days before she's gone again. One by one. They've all given up. Last I heard she was in a facility in southern CA. Hopefully she gets help. I knew someone who weighted 350 plus lbs in high school. Really nice guy but picked on and ignored because of his weight. Got into keto and intermittent fasting. Built all this muscle. Lost over half his body weight. Got a girlfriend. He was totally unrecognizable. Started studying to become a personal trainer and weight loss maintenance was his entire life. Lots of motivational quotes on his Facebook like if I did it, you can too. Then he loosened his keto fasting requirements and celebrated eating dessert for the first time in 2 years. It was a big deal. Candles and everything. Over 6 months I saw him getting chubbier. And thought it was nice that he was more relaxed since he had been very fixated. For example, he used to have week-long periods of water fasting. But then a year later, you guessed it, back to his original weight and more. It was horrible. He's back to being shy, withdrawn. No girlfriend in photos anymore. No longer mentions personal training. I did a full 360 when I was in college. I cleaned up my eating habits and vegan working out. I actually got fit and was looking good. Then I went back to my old ways and stopped working out and started eating unhealthy again, lol. When my wife left me for someone who enjoys the outdoors, traveling, and doing exciting shit, I vowed I would change my homebody ways. I would adventure. You know? I tried that. It was fun. For maybe a month. Then I realized that it wasn't a shortcoming of mine that ended my marriage. Rather, it was a simple incompatibility that had developed between us. I will begrudge nobody their happiness. Especially not someone I promised to make happy forever. Accepting who she is and who I am is how I can do that. Seeking her happiness and setting me free is how she has. I am a homebody. I like staying in, ordering in, having drinks with the neighbors. I love not having to justify that. I love not being dragged anywhere. I have ended up where I was before. A full 360. And I'm so much more comfortable now. Edit. This my most popular comment by far. They are few. And first Reddit award. Thank you deeply to all who read and comment. I hope you find happiness and peace with your lifestyle, whatever it may entail. I started playing less video games and stopped watching anime to have more time to improve myself and get more dates. Now I'm in a long-term relationship and my girlfriend keeps introducing me to new anime and playing PC games with me. Edit. To answer the few major kinds of responses I've gotten. No. You shouldn't drop your hobbies for your significant other. But if your hobbies keep you inside and prevent you from being active or socializing, then it's time to dial it back a little and find some other things you like doing as well. Also, while similar hobbies are important in a relationship, compatibility, communication, and respect are far more important. I've just gotten extra lucky to find all of those with one woman. Watched a family member that was addicted to meth get clean after a prison stint. He got married and they had 2 kids, adding to her own 2. Doing really well and both regularly attending NA. Until one of the kids got lymphoma. He worked his ass off to provide for everyone. The travel expenses alone putting them in the red. Long story short, the wife waited until their kid was in remission to say she wanted a divorce. She'd been pocketing most of the money family sent to help with expenses. And, by the way, The youngest two, one of which was the one with cancer, aren't actually his, and yes, DNA was tested. He was kicked out of the house, ended up crashing with an old drug buddy, and went back to making, selling, and using meth. He's currently in prison again. What really sucks is that he didn't let a single family member know about the situation. We're all ours, if not states away. Or you could bet your ass we all would have found a way to support him. Ex-wife can rot. Though I really hope her family is stepping up for those kids. I once rearranged my living room in a full 360. I tried every combination, pushing the furniture in an entire circle in my living room, before ending up exactly where it started out. Depression, doing better, depression. Id Technical Institute, a for-profit scam college, had a commercial back in the 90s where a person said going to it made their life do a 360. Truer than they intended. I switched from smoking to vaping about 5 years ago. Probably no healthier, but less stinky and more convenient. Last month, I get the crazy idea to quit vaping. I use the last of my liquid, get some Nicorette, go to work that day and realize the mistake I've made. By that afternoon I go to a convenience store and buy cigarettes. Keep buying cigs, telling myself this will be the last pack every time. Last week I gave up and ordered some vape liquid. Goddamn it. I met a guy in college that grew up in a religious house and seemed like a classic good Christian boy. That lasted for about 2 weeks of him being on his own. He went wild, partying, drinking, girls, etc. Classic stereotype. Then he almost failed out and met a girl, and became like super Jesusified. He's still in a group text with me and some buddies, and every once in a while he'll interject with some nonsense BS. The one that always sticks out was him implying that we were all doomed to failure in our relationships because we thought that Japanese Longman gum commercial was funny. Our joking about infidelity was a clear path to actual cheating by his reckoning. So, I guess he was like a tropical storm picking up crazy on each rotation. My brother went from being a thief and a drug addict to holding a job and loaning me money when I needed it. And now he's on heroin and stole $130 from me, so he's right back where he started. My attitude towards wild horses in the American West has done a full 360. When I was young, I thought Mustangs were an awesome symbol of freedom. Then as a young adult, I started viewing them as an invasive species that needed to be removed. I thought the BLM should slaughter them and sell the meat to France. Let the native antelope and bighorn sheep reclaim the high desert. But then I learned that prior to the Ice Age and the arrival of man, there had been lots of native horses grazing throughout North America. Obviously, those lineages are all extinct. But the Mustangs play a similar role in the ecosystem today. Now, I still do support herd management. We've killed off the wolves. And since nobody wants to hunt horse, that means rounding them up and sterilizing, culling some of the herd every year. But I believe they have every right to live on the open range. And I like seeing them in the wild. A few years ago I was a druggie. I smoked and sniffed and injected it all. I stopped for a girl whom I had a crush on for multiple years. A few months later we got together and then she killed herself. I felt like shit and I thought it was my fault. I went straight back to drugs and alcohol. The lot. I almost died until I realized what I had lost. Friends, family, those who I thought would always be there left me thinking I was dead. I went to rehab for a year and got out 2 years ago now, and I regret all the shit I did to myself and others. I guess I did a 540. Growing up, I had a friend who was a classic tomboy. Loved playing outside. Toy dinosaurs. Didn't like dresses, etc. Around age 12 she changed. Grew her hair out. Started wearing makeup and girls' clothes. She stayed like that throughout her teens. Now, as an adult, she's circled back towards more and more masculine expression. More soft butch than stone butch. But definitely not wearing makeup and blouses anymore. I went inpatient for my eating disorder. Managed to stop throwing up after meals and started eating over 1,200 cal a day. Got discharged after 3 months and relapsed 1 month later. I heard a shitty rap song where the lyrics say don't get hurt. Turn around and throw it in reverse. That's bothered me for a while since turning around and throwing it in reverse ultimately leads you in the same direction. Only backwards this time and more dangerous. Moving back in with my parents. I'm in a constant 360 of losing weight, being happy, eating and giving no fucks, realizing I got big. When I turned 20 I stopped reading fanfics. Yes, it's kinda embarrassing to admit you read fanfic, and stopped being part of fandom culture online. That lasted almost all of my 20s. Now I'm 33 and pretty much right back into all that geekery. Broke up with boyfriend after he was emotionally unavailable and made me feel unwanted and unimportant. I wrote him a letter to do it because he hadn't texted or called me in over 5 days. This was in February 2018. In April he started showing up at my house unannounced and he looked terrible. He was thin and just started crying constantly and said he would change. He ended up reciprocating the words I love you and taking me home to meet his parents that summer. We had a wonderful summer and he made a complete 180. Most recently, he has not shown up to things that are important to me, including making me go to weddings by myself even though I paid for plane tickets for his brother's wedding. Showing up late to my birthday dinner and leaving immediately after. As well as saying I don't know when a girl hit on him in front of me at the bar by asking if he were with anyone. He's done a full 360. Worse in many ways. Honestly, I am at a loss for what to do because I'm sick of bitching at him. Update. Wrote a letter to set my boundaries and left his stuff. We are done. Unfortunately but also fortunately. The other day I was driving to a friend's house. I thought I was going the wrong way. So I turned around and went the opposite way. Then I realized I had been going the right way so I turned back around and went the way I had been going originally. Bam. 360. My mom is working up to her 6th marriage. Every time she's never going to do that again and inevitably the cycle begins again. Ah well. I got a friend who slowly ruined a 2-year relationship because her boyfriend couldn't handle her mental baggage anymore. He didn't handle it the most graceful way. But I couldn't blame him, and she managed to start getting more independent from other people. Started feeling better. Then found a random druggie on Facebook that lived an hour away, down the freeway, and went down there every 3 or so days to have sex with him. Got the hella disapproving coming from me and her family was immense. She broke up with him after I finally fucking nailed it into her head that he was a shitty person. The dude had so many red flags from the start, and about a month later she found another rando on Facebook who lived even further away to go fuck with. 3 months into this relationship and she's moved in with him. They're talking about marriage at 19. And I haven't talked to her since she moved out of her parents' house. Can't think for herself at all. Left home 3 days after graduating high school to work as an archery instructor at a Christian camp. Ended up in Alaska that winter at a missionary school. Based on some friends that lived there recommending it. Spent 3 months living in Peru working as a short-term missionary. Mostly in orphanages. Met a cute girl from Denmark. Went to a secondary missionary school in Maui, Hawaii. Started dating said Danish girl. Traveled with a group of missionaries for 3 months in Nepal. We mostly hiked out to remote hard to reach churches to do basis seminars for them. Went to visit my now fiance's family in Denmark. We got married back home in Michigan. In the little town of 900 people I grew up in. We'll have been married 6 years this fall. Just had our 3rd child and have a beautiful home in the country with a dog. 6 goats. 10 ducks. 4 pigs and 2 big roosters. I also worked with my dad at his manufacturing company. Never imagined I'd travel the world. Marry a girl from Europe and end back up living in the small town I grew up in. It was quite the 360. Went from a 16-year-old, unemployed, single loser playing World of Warcraft to a successful English teacher in Japan. Married and healthy. Back to being a divorced, single, chronically ill, and unemployed. Once again living at home. And as of Tuesday I'll be playing classic World of Warcraft again. Funny how nothing ever changes. I've only heard people say that ironically. Or the trolls with the Xbox 360 joke. But to answer, I quit drinking, then started drinking so many times I'm dizzy from all the 360s. Decided to lose weight and get healthy. Developed a restrictive eating disorder. Pretty common in recovery from addiction. People will straighten out, live the good life for a bit, then burn it back down. Recovering alcoholic here. I can't tell you how many people I've seen in group that get sober, have a great couple of years and then fall back into it. I'm not judging, having been that person myself. It just makes me sad to see friends lose everything, gain it all back then lose it again. Horace was a crackhead. He went to NA and got help in a good way. Really changed for the better. Got hired by a local golf clubhouse working in the kitchen and worked his way up to line cook. This was a high paying gig where it was easy to make tons of connections in the industry. Got new apartment and was so proud of it that he invited me over to see it. It was immaculately clean and empty. He was saving for some badass furniture he showed me. Anyway, I ran into him downtown one night and he said he'd suck my dick for $20. He had smoked some crack that morning and needed another fix. Didn't show up for work the next day. The owners and employees cared for him so much they offered to help get him back in NA and let him keep his job. A relapse doesn't have to be the end of everything. He came in the next day and said how thankful he was. Then at the end of his shift stole $3,500 worth of equipment and food. Don't smoke crack, people. I was super mom. Became an alcoholic. Then got sober and became super mom again. When I was curious if I was straight, but wondered if I might be gay, totally straight. Only took one dick in my ass to prove it. A guy sold his house because he was tired of maintaining it and rented an apartment instead. Less than 2 years later, that same house was back on the market. He missed it so much that he bought it back, and for far more than he had sold it. Walked into the garage to get something. Completely forgot what it was. So I turned around to leave. And at that moment I remembered. So I kept turning and went into the garage. Little sister. Only 15 and she was about 13 when it started getting really bad. She started sleeping around and drinking, smoking weed. Long story short, the state was involved and eventually put with a temporary foster parent. She came home after a couple months and there was like a 3-month honeymoon period where she acted like an angel. Yeah. Not anymore. Went back to drugs and sex. Currently being placed in another foster home. Probably a little more long term. A woman whose husband had cheated on her. Very understandably said all sorts of horrible things about cheaters in general. Less understandably, she sort of made it her thing to be an arsehole to anyone she knew had cheated at one point or another. Snide and outright hateful remarks to people about it. Screaming at some people, not the husband, who didn't respond how she liked. It was crazy the way she went about it. Messaging people on social media that she didn't even know to condemn them for cheating. I only heard about all this shit because we went to the same church and churches are great at spreading prayer requests for people. Gossip. And then she fucked the married youth pastor, whose wife was due with their first child, in the church who had supported her through all this. The extra stupidity here was that the church who had given her ex-husband the cold shoulder let the youth pastor keep his job. His wife moved back to her home state, and the church got over it pretty quick to avoid being without a pastor. You could say it took a surprising turn. For sure. A friend of mine used Juul to stop smoking cigarettes. After a few months, he was so addicted that he picked up smoking again to wean himself off of Juul. Over the past decade or so I feel like I've done a 1440 degrees with my depression. Every time I start climbing out of the pit something sends me tumbling back down. Jaime Lannister. This makes me think of the scene with Anthony Quinn in Last Action Hero. I dated a girl who later came out as gay. Dated girls for a couple years. Then started doing queerer stuff, doing drag. Queer party scene. Dating trans and non-binary folks. etc. Eventually she got bored with it all and started dating dudes and identified as straight again. A full 360? Every time I have depression. I do a 360 every other week, not been able to keep my sleep on schedule. Had a friend who got into drugs. Kept getting harder and harder stuff before doing heroin. He was hooked for years. Lost his job, his house, his wife, his kid, his car, everything. Few years in, his daughter seeing him fucked up on the street and bursting into tears knocked some sense into him. He slowly but surely cleaned up his act. Got a job at a shelter. Got a tiny apartment and bike so he could get to work. Got himself a girlfriend. Started seeing his kids regularly. Eventually got a bigger apartment with his girlfriend and they had a baby girl. 2 years later, girlfriend caught him smoking pot while watching the baby. Then she catches him straight up leaving the kid alone while he left the house. And finally she kicked him out when she found out he was using heroin again. He died of an overdose a year later. This pretty much describes January for one of my friends. She's one of those new year, new me people. She gets a gym membership. She'll start some sort of new project such as painting or home repair. She'll get a new wardrobe. Sometimes all of these at once. Then by February she's gone back to the same clothes. The same hobbies. The same routine. I fell in love with a girl when I was in high school. But things never synced up with us. She was dating someone for 7 years. And 4 years into their relationship I moved across the country and we lost touch for the 3 years I was there. We reconnected. The spark was still there. And I moved back to my home state and we are now expecting our first baby. TLDR fell in love. She was unavailable for a decade. I moved away then moved back and now I am having a baby with the love of my life. This whole world does it in Italy. P. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3. XPM of Greece. Alexis Tsipras. Had promised that under his administration the country's policies would turn around 360 degrees. He didn't lie. After a few months of disastrous experimentation, he reverted to an even more dysfunctional version of the policies he vilified before the election. As an aside, he is an engineer. So it's incredible that he didn't know better. Some people, including me, suspect it was just a little joke at the expense of his core demographics. Who would both not catch it and not care. Think Trump's I love the poorly educated. Bad times in marriage. We nearly broke up. Then went fuck you we ain't going out like that and fought back. My grandpa used to be an alcoholic. Gin for breakfast, lunch and dinner. Used to be a heavy smoker as well. Had mistresses. Now a pastor in our church and devoted his life spreading the word of the Lord in different provinces in our country. Never touched alcohol and cigarettes again. No more mistresses. And takes care of my grandma who is bedridden. Edit. How do I delete this comment? Didn't understand the whole question and now I'll look dumb f lol. Still proud of my grandpa though. Smoking. Quit a while back but have started again. Trying to quit again. I beat an eating disorder and then moved. Had a complete breakdown that no one was here to stop and redevelop the eating disorder and some other bullshit. I quit smoking weed when I met my now husband. 2 kids and a mortgage later. I'm a daily smoker again. Every day. Shit. I have to get to work. Closes Reddit fuck I'm bored. Opens Reddit. Not a full 360 but almost there. When I was younger. About 7-8 years ago. I used to work at a restaurant. I slowly climbed my way up after a few years to where I was making a comfortable wage. During this time I met a beautiful girl that I've fallen in love with and a few years later got engaged with. A few months later I got a very disturbing message from her saying how sorry she was about what was going to happen. I rushed home to pull her out of the bathtub. As I held her I had no idea what to do. This event depressed me to no end and I wanted a way out of it. I was so desperate I started to do any drugs I could even though I knew none of it was working. Even losing my job. One day I woke up in the hospital with my mother sitting beside me. I nearly died from doing drugs and she ran to me to make sure I was okay even though I was ruining my life. This was my inspiration to go into rehab. 4 years later I've been clean ever since, helped sponsor a few people and even worked my way back into being a cook. Still not making as much money as I used to but I am currently seeing a cute girl that I'm going on vacation with soon. My cousin was a heroin addict. He was homeless and stole anything he thought he could sell for more heroin. After an overdose and being narcaned, he went to rehab and did really well. About 3 months after rehab, his friend killed himself. And he just couldn't cope with it. The needle was there for him when no one else was. I wish he had just called me. But I understand, and I'm across the country. He's passed since then. But yeah, he did a 360. Breaks my heart he didn't call me. I don't think I would have been able to keep him from his addiction. But at least I could have told him I loved him and was there for him. And goodbye. Knew a girl who got out of jail after 8 months. Had her sugar daddy bring crack for her. She couldn't wait until she got out of the jail parking lot. They saw her hitting the pipe on the cameras. And the same sheriff who picked her up happened to be there on separate business and arrested her again. Dumbest shit ever. PewDiePie's channel. Began with Minecraft. Did scary games. Did more internet related stuff. Had a few controversies. Began reviewing memes, and now he is back at Minecraft again. Medication assisted treatment of opioid abuse. I'm gonna turn my life around. By staying hooked on buprenorphine rather than oxys. Forever. I was a normal, nerdy little kid. Then I was traumatized and became an absolute bitch. And now, after some years on medication and self-work and healthy relationships, I'm starting to become myself again. I did a full 360 after elementary when I stopped bullying and when I stopped being racist towards Hispanics. I was racist towards Hispanics because I hated the fact that I myself was Hispanic. And I hated how white people treated them and was afraid that that's the way I would be treated if anyone found out I was Hispanic, so I tired being white by not liking them. I did my turnaround after realizing that I had a lot of Spanish friends and they're not at all bad. I hate the fact that my racism was due to how much hate I saw in the media. It's so crazy that this was my mindset as a child. I stopped bullying just because I got too lazy to get out of my way to make someone's day bad. So after that I started seeming nice to people and I made new friends of all different groups, and this made me not only be nice on the outside but fixed me on the inside too. I'm so happy for my turnaround. I still have a little self-hate. But it's not for my heritage, so I still have a little ways to go till I get a full 360. Going from being a stable independent person to homeless, then back to independent lol. So anytime I get bored I change myself completely and get into new hobbies and try being nicer and sympathetic, and then like 2 weeks later I could not care less about anything, so I've been doing this for like 3-4 years, so go me and my drawing hobby that I suck at because I never continue and improve. Before school last year, depressed and lonely. First half of school year, tried to make friends, and did. Other half of school year, fell into deep depression and lost most friends. Before school this year, tomorrow, depressed and lonely, though a lot less since I have hobbies now. Co-worker married his wife. She cheated. They got divorced. He had to take a loan to pay her settlement. Before the loan was paid off, he remarried her. She cheated again. And he divorced her again. He pulled the full 540. My mother was doing some bad things when I was a baby. Got arrested and incarcerated, leaving my grandma to raise my brother and me. When she got out, she swore she had changed. Got a job. Had a good life going. Then we found out she was arrested 20+ years after the first time for doing the exact same shit as before. I broke up with my high school girlfriend right before leaving for basic training because she was bonkers. Then I got stationed close to home and married her. She was still bonkers. If you want to get nothing in return, you can like and join my Discord. There is a link in the description.